If you want to enter the old city of Jerusalem from the east, you have exactly one option. You have to walk through a massive stone archway known today as the Lion's Gate. Look closely at the facade, and you'll spot the gate's namesakes carved into the stone. But those aren't the biblical lions of Judah. They're actually leopards, borrowed from 13th century Mamluk architecture and repurposed here when the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent built these walls in the 1500s. The mismatch between the name and the carvings is just the beginning. Depending on who you ask, this entrance has a completely different identity. Christians call it St. Mary's Gate or St. Stephen's Gate. To Muslims, it is Bab al-Asbat, the Gate of the Tribes. In Jewish tradition, it's referred to as the Yehoshaphat Gate or the Sheep's Gate. But its most defining modern identity was forged much more recently, during the fighting of the 1967 Six-Day War. This was the exact breach point where the army entered the Old City, leading to the famous moment when 3 paratroopers reached the Western Wall. When a single archway carries half a dozen overlapping identities, it suggests that in Jerusalem, the names we give a place often carry more weight than the ground it stands on. To see how those names can eventually detach from the ground entirely, we have to look back to the biblical era, to the origins of the Sheep's Gate referenced in both the book of Nehemiah and the Gospel of John. According to text from the 1st century, the Sheep Gate stood right next to the Bethesda Pool, a deep reservoir where a famous miracle of healing gave the site immense significance to early believers. But we have a spatial paradox. This timeline map shows the narrow boundaries of the ancient Herodian Temple Mount compared against the much wider perimeter of the Ottoman walls we see today. The modern gates didn't even exist when the original Sheep's Gate was functioning. When King Herod drastically expanded the footprint of the Temple Mount, the original entrance was demolished. The functional location of the Sheep's Gate shifted outward to accommodate the massive new architecture. As the city's physical footprint pushed outward, the religious memory associated with that gate adjusted its coordinates to match the new reality of the urban sprawl. The Sheep's Gate only moved down the street. The second historical migration we see in Jerusalem is far more extreme. It involves the stoning of St. Stephen. Stephen was one of the early deacons of the Jerusalem community, convicted of blasphemy by the Sanhedrin. His execution remains a foundational martyrdom story in Christian tradition. Today, official guides will point to the area just outside the Lion's Gate as the exact spot where he died.
However, early Byzantine records map the stoning on the complete opposite side of the city. For centuries, pilgrims were directed here to the towering northern entrance known as the Damascus Gate. The martyrdom site crossed the city because of logistics. During the Mamluk and Crusader eras, political shifts caused Christian travelers to abandon the northern route. The Damascus Gate became too difficult to use. This map traces how that shifting traffic relocated the tradition. Pilgrims still demanded a physical place to mourn their first martyr, so the site of the stoning was detached from its original coordinates and transplanted to the active Lion's Gate in the east. As medieval politics cut off access to the original gate, pilgrims simply transplanted the martyrdom site to a more convenient piece of real estate. Fast forward to the present day, and this habit of migrating history has left us with some strange redundancies. In the late 19th century, a Dominican order returned to the Damascus Gate and rebuilt a church over the original ruins. Because of that, Jerusalem now has 2 completely distinct, competing pilgrimage sites dedicated to the same event. The shaping of these myths eventually gives way to the literal shaping of the stone itself. If you look at the physical footprint of the Lion's Gate today, you'll notice an aggressive modern alteration. Like most medieval entrances, the original Ottoman gate was designed with a sharp, defensive L-shaped turn to slow down invading armies. Recently, city planners cut straight through the ancient back wall so that modern cars could drive right inside. Jerusalem's sacred geography operates as a living mechanism. Whether relocating a martyrdom site for pilgrim safety or fracturing 16th century masonry for car traffic, the city's inhabitants continually reshape the physical world to fit the demands of the